Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to have you back for another installment of our weekly webinar. Today's Thursday, June 12th. Looks like everybody is muted. Thank you. And feel free to use the closed caption feature as you need to during our time together and the chat for questions and comments. I'm going to introduce our speaker here in just a moment and say more about how you can use the chat as you choose to. You all who have been on the webinar before know of my predilection toward inviting social workers to speak on the webinar, and today is no exception. We have with us today Renita Ray Davis, who is a licensed clinical social worker who has credentials in multiple states and deep roots in Alabama. Renita brings a strong commitment to mental health advocacy and has a special focus on Alzheimer's and dementia care through the lens of her practice as a social worker. She's the founder of Illuminated Expressions, where she supports fellow social workers through supervision, education, and telehealth. And I know we've all become much more familiar with telehealth over the last few years. She also leads the Goddesses of Social Work supervision community and hosts the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, both aimed at empowering professionals in the field. And as a professional in the field, I can say that Renita's podcast has made me feel empowered, and I was honored to be a guest on the podcast with Renita. She is known for her warmth and dedication, and I definitely co-sign that. From the very first moment that I was in touch with Renita, I thought this is this is my person, and I think you will leave today's webinar feeling that way as well. She's uplifting individuals and communities, and very importantly, reminds us of the power of empathy in brain health and caregiving. So I am delighted to have Renita with us today. Renita and I have never met in person, but I feel like she's my kindred spirit, and a great person to visit with us on the webinar and talk about how social work support can be meaningful to you. You've heard a little bit about Renita's background, and I promise I'm going to let her talk in just a moment. But I just wanted to tell her thank you again for being here. And any of you who might have seen our webinar earlier this year about the Mama Joe Project, the movie about Alzheimer's disease that I was lucky enough to be in. That is what brought Renita and me together. She saw the movie and got in touch with me, and here we are. So Renita, I will turn it over to you. Welcome, and let's talk. Let's get going. Why is social work so important?
I love that I'm like, don't turn over to me. Let's do this thing together. Let's do this thing together. And thank you so much, Kelly, for having me on. And I do hope that I'll be back. And I see there is another social worker just through the credential. And so that was exciting to see when I logged in that there are already social workers. And I didn't realize that you have a predilection of asking social workers. So whatever I'm about to say doesn't feel very unique
Yeah.
at all, but maybe repetition. I love affirmations and, talk to my clients about you don't necessarily have to believe the affirmation, but repetition is important. So maybe in repeating how social workers can be of service in this space can continue to drive that point home. So I just want to tell you thank you so much for letting me come today. And
Well,
hey
sure.
everybody.
Yes. So, one of the things that we have at our Alzheimer's Disease Research Center is a team called the Cognitive Care Network. And I see a couple of those folks on here with us. So I'm glad they're here. And what the Cognitive Care Network team does is someone gets a diagnosis or even the consideration of a diagnosis of a change in their cognition, whether it's Alzheimer's or one of the other dementias, or they're just concerned that something is going on in themselves and a loved one and someone in their community, and they're just kind of flailing. They're not sure what to do, where to go. And that's when we social workers, I'm going to say we, even though it's really the cognitive care team here, sort of swoop in with our capes and our magic wands, and we say, here's how we can help you. So, Renita, imagine that you were on our team, the Cognitive Care Network here in Kansas, and someone said to you, I just got a diagnosis of dementia. Now what? What's your
Mm.
answer?
get you a social worker.
Yeah.
Let's get the family a social worker. And if I can, I'm going to pivot just a little bit, just to kind of give a little bit more of my background and why um, I'm here today, or maybe why I'm here today. So, like Kelly said, I saw the My Mama Joe project in Atlanta, but before we even get to the My Mama Joe project, my sister, Dr. Kendra Ray, who I think is going to be an amazing guest on the webinar soon. I can't wait for you guys to meet her as well. And you're going to be like, "Are y'all twins?" And she's going to emphatically say, "No, we are not twins." I don't mind it, but she doesn't like it for some reason. But we are not twins, but we look very much alike. But Dr. Kendra Ray is a music therapist in this
Wonderful.
space. She's amazing, and she uses music with caregivers, and she has this curriculum and just doing some amazing work, and speaks all over the nation, actually all over the world, as it relates to music therapy and caregiver with people caring for those they love with Alzheimer's and other related dementias. So that's always been her space, right? And I am the older sister, but she's been doing that work for 20 years, and I've been a social worker for over. This will be this month was my 26th year as a social worker. And I've been clinically licensed for this year will be probably 13, 14 years clinically licensed. So, and doing the work in the trenches, meeting with people. I was even a hospice social worker for a few years there. So doing the work, but Alzheimer's and dementia has always been my sister's space, right? But because she does get to speak all over the world, I get to go on vacation for free, right? I get to go wherever she is, and she's being put up in hotels and all this other stuff. And because I am in private practice, I have the honor and luxury of being able to just pick up and go wherever she is. And so when she was in Atlanta to see My Mama, because she's based out of Brooklyn. When she was in Atlanta and I'm in Alabama to go see the My Mama Joe project, I was like, oh, you're that close. I have to go see you. And so it wasn't even about Alzheimer's or dementia. It was about me going to see my sister. Saw this film. If you haven't seen it, it's on PBS. It's streaming on PBS, but saw this film, and even though my sister's been doing this work, and like I said, she's an Alzheimer's Association fellow. She's funded. Maria Shriver's Women in Alzheimer funds her research, and we just were in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago for that. She's been doing this work, but I saw this film, and on the screen, Kelly G. Loeb came up. Kelly G. Loeb, MSW, came up on the screen. And I was like, oh my God. And I hit my sister. I was like, oh my God, that's a social worker, right? And then there was two other, and forgive me, I don't remember their name, but Kelly just stood out. Like,
oh my goodness.
Who is this person? Her colorful hair, she looks like me. She's giving me information. And did I mention I've been doing social work for 26 years? She's saying something on the screen that I didn't even know. And so I met with Dr. Herb Caldwell, who is the film's producer. I was like, I have got to meet this Kelly person. I've got to meet her. And I was persistent, and he hooked us up. And like she said, she came on the podcast. But in that 26 years, Kelly, I and my sister, who I go to all of her things. We were in San Diego at the Alzheimer's Association a few years back. I've gone to all her things. It never occurred to me that social workers are needed in this space, and why I wanted to come. Why are so important in this space. Why I wanted to come was here in Alabama, I've taught at the university level, hundreds of social workers, was the chair of our department. I have, I know a bunch of social workers. I now supervise a community of social workers. I don't even know, but 60 plus LCSWs under my belt. And one of the topics we have not ever talked about is Alzheimer's and dementia. And that is how I know that even though all of you are here today, there is a world of helping professionals out here who don't know how needed they are in this space. And
Wow.
so when I've met with Dr. Herb Caldwell or even watched his film, and he was also on the God Says the Social Work podcast. He was my only male ever. Well, I've had two now. Since him, I've had another guy, one of my former students, come on. But he was the first guy I ever had on. And one of the things he said to me was his family, when his mama got the diagnosis, they needed information, resources, and support. And when I think about information, resources, and support, I think about social workers. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. So even though I've been doing this 26 years, my sister is a freaking fellow of the Alzheimer's Association. I know that social workers provide information, resources, and support. I said, how do I find out or come up with a way that we can let social workers know that we are needed in this space in bigger ways than we're already there?
Mm-hmm.
Because even though you have your group and the network that you just mentioned, I am aware that there's a whole world of social workers out there that aren't talking about this particular topic, and want to know how can I get involved, and how can I get social workers involved, and or especially social workers who are in Alabama or in the
Mm-hmm.
South, because um, now that I'm like on it, I've been taking CEUs and all this stuff. And, I don't have the numbers down like some of you guys who have the numbers, but hearing that there's over 11 million people who are unpaid caregivers, and that it is far more likely for caregivers who look like me to be discriminated against as far as trying to find resources. The other thing that I think about is, I mean, I have a master's degree. I'm licensed, clinically licensed in multiple states, and it's still difficult for me to navigate the medical system. And if it's difficult for me to navigate the medical system, I'm only imagining someone who's getting a diagnosis. And again, mind you, in the rural South, the Black folks, we don't talk about dementia. We don't talk about Alzheimer's like that. And Kelly, you and I even briefly talked about when we met was, the history that, especially here in Alabama or in the South, that folks don't want to be in clinical studies because of what happened with the syphilis studies and some of the ethical issues that have come with being a Black person in the medical world. So there's a lot of distrust there. So then they're keeping they're suffering, I heard somebody say, in silence, because they don't know, one, they haven't heard about Alzheimer's or dementia, they don't know who to talk to, and they don't trust the medical system. And so it's important that social workers are getting involved. And even if you're like, oh, I know all about it, we need to be talking to other professionals who may not be aware that Alzheimer's and dementia is touching everybody.
Everybody. I've often thought in my career, I'm just a little behind you, Renita, about 25 years next
Just a year.
a little behind you. I'm going to catch up though, but I've often thought during my time doing this work that dementia and Alzheimer's disease are things that people just really don't want to know about or have to know about until they have to know about it. It's not something that people think, oh, I should find out about that thing. It's a party you never wanted to be invited to, and now you're the guest of honor. And having a social worker on the team can help folks walk along that road. I imagine that in your practice as a social worker, Renita, you must talk a lot with your clients and with your colleagues and your supervisees about self-care. And I would love if you would share with us maybe some insider secrets from a real social worker about how do we practice self-care if we are a caregiver, if we are a person with a diagnosis, how do we make sure we practice good self-care?
This is something I talk about every single day. The client right before this is what we talk. So I'm going to tell you what I told him.
Okay.
And mind you, this is a 24-year-old young Black man who's in therapy. And I love that kind of stuff because there's a stigma about Black people don't come to therapy. We do. There we are in therapy. But one of the things that I talked to about, I think I just told you guys, my sister was featured at Maria Alzheimer's Women's Alzheimer Movement in Las Vegas at the Cleveland Clinic. And in order for me to get to Las Vegas from Alabama, I had to take 2 planes there, 2 planes back. So I was on the plane
Yeah.
4 times this past week. And one of my favorite things the flight attendant says is making sure you put your oxygen mask on first
Yes.
before you help someone else. And so that's obviously one of the things that I talk to my clients about and my social workers who are caregivers, right? But how do you do that intentionally?
Mhm.
And it has to be intentional. It has to be intentional. So what it looks like, I call it containers. You have a morning routine in the morning, and then you have an evening or a nighttime routine at night before you go to bed, and everything in between could go to hell.
Oh no.
Just, you know. But if you have those containers, what you're doing intentionally every single morning, even if you have to wake up 30 minutes to an hour earlier, and if you have to stay up 15 minutes to 20 minutes later at night to do those two things for yourself, you are filling your cup. And even though all this other stuff might be chaotic and unknown and unexpected, you have those two things. Even when you're traveling, even when you have out of town guests, even when you have doctor's appointments, even when you have all of the things, make sure that there is something you can do in the morning and something you can do in the evening. So for me, I wake up and I love candles, and so I'm gonna light a candle, and I like the Lord's Prayer, so I say the Lord's Prayer, and that's I have other things I do, like I have a yoga practice and I journal every morning. But before I got into the other things that I've implemented or added, I had one simple thing that I know was my first morning time routine. And for me, again, that's lighting a candle and saying the Lord's Prayer, right?
Mm.
Now, once I got that in place and did that for a while, I added, okay, now I journal every morning. I also added, I do some yoga every morning. And because I do hold space for social workers, I'm the social worker. And because I do have clients that I see in my therapy practice, I can't do any of that, none of it, before I do that first morning routine stuff, right? And so then I have my day. And in the evening, and I learned this from somebody when I went to New Orleans back in 2018. In the evening, I have learned that I have to release what I've done for the day. Other
Mm.
people's stuff that I've taken on, other people's emotions that heard and felt, because I feel strongly. And especially when you're caring for someone. And, as a therapist, I care about these people I've been seeing for 3, 4, 5 years, right? And so I care about them. And so when I've heard something that's hurting them, that's going on with them, I as a human being, I can't help but take it on. So it is so intentional for me at the end of my day to shower, to rinse all of everybody else's energies off of me, right?
Mhm.
You got to rinse it all off of you, including the person you're caring for, because we got to stay grounded in ourselves. Wash the day away.
Love
Absolutely.
it.
You got to wash the day away. And one of the steps that I added to that is then I have little oils that are my personal scent, right?
Mhm.
Right now I'm into Tiffany Rose from Walmart. You can get it for $67. It's a Tiffany and Co. It's rose gold, and I got it for $67. But after I've washed other people's stuff off of me, and I get behind my neck, make sure I get my shoulders really good and my back to make, because you're carrying that. Once you rinse the day away, then you want to make sure you have your own signature scent, your own
Mhm.
signature lotion, your own signature, like, this is me. This is me. Center yourself back into yourself.
Mhm.
One of the things y'all just heard me, I start the day praying, and I end up washing it away and making sure I've
Mhm.
centered it back to myself again. And so people think about self-care as, going to get a massage. Don't, every week I'm there Monday at the massage. I do every Monday. I do not work on Mondays, and I am at the massage place. But again, those are things you added as you took time. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the intentionality is with the mundane things, with the
Mhm.
everyday things. I even, in between clients, when I'm able to, I go and I wash my hands.
Mm.
I wash my hands and say, okay, that's done. And I put a little lotion on. I'm like, okay, center back into yourself. So the self care is not with these big, going to get a massage. And I love you. Look at my nails, they're so cute. Going to get my nails and my hair and all of that done. I love all of that. But it's that's great. But it really is with the everyday mundane things of intentionality of you pouring into yourself that nobody else may even be aware of.
I love that. And, one of the things that we have learned, I think, over the last generation in terms of caring for someone with a cognitive change is how important it is to establish a routine and how important it is to make things feel familiar and safe. We know that when people have changes in their cognition, a lot of times there's a high level of anxiety about where am I? What am I doing? Can I go home? I want to go
Mm-hmm.
home. And so when we establish that feeling of safety and care and empathy, as you mentioned in your bio, I think we have an easier day. Notice I didn't say an easy day, I said an easier day. And I think that knowing that kind of self care routine is so important, and only a social worker could really explain it so beautifully as you did,
Mm.
Renita. I would love to hear a little more from you about um, your bio says the power of empathy in brain
Mm-hmm.
health and caregiving. And I imagine you see all kinds of clients from the 24-year-old young man to the 49-year-old fellow social worker to everybody in between. How do you suggest to caregivers, there are likely some caregivers on this call, how do you find that balance between empathy and, oh my goodness, I don't know that I can do this anymore?
I think it goes back to what we were just talking about at the end of the day, and finding that thing that's yours. That
Mm,
because I think in order to be an empathetic person, you are anticipating the needs of the person you're caring for. So even if it's your person who has Alzheimer's or some type of dementia, or just anyone you're caregiving, for me it's my clients and my social workers. Oh, I didn't put this in my bio. I had it in there, but then I took it out because I was like, it's important to me. But 2 weeks ago I became a yaya, a grandma for the first time. My
mm,
son and his partner had their first child, and so just even thinking about newborn babies, and the anticipating what their need is, right? But not a newborn baby, or if there's something that you don't have to put yourself in, if that makes any sense. Like sometimes, because I've been doing this work, in Kelly, I'm sure you can relate, and a lot of you can relate. You already know what that person needs, right? You
mm,
already know they're going to be looking for their water bottle, or they're going to be looking for their keys. And so you just go ahead and jump up
mm,
and handle it. And one of the things that I'm noticing, in having read a lot of my sister's papers, been to a lot of her presentations, is independence is so important in
mhm,
early and middle stage. And if you're able to allow that person to be as independent as possible for as long as possible, that's good for their brain health. And those of
mhm,
us who are very empathetic people, and we anticipate the need, and we're like, oh, they're looking for this, let me go ahead and get it, instead of allowing them an opportunity to see if they can work it out, where what that water bottle may be, or where those keys might, or maybe not the keys, but what that other item might be. One, we can allow ourselves, our central nervous system, to relax and not have to jump up for everything. Because as a
mhm,
caregiver, we're like, oh, I gotta care. And so then we can become, helicopter-ish about it,
mm,
versus holding back just a little bit and setting some energetic boundaries and saying, okay, do I have to move immediately? The other thing, and I know it feels like a little pivot, but I feel like it's important to say, is our phones and our emails, we're just so
mm,
readily available to everybody all the time. And I don't think our brains or bodies were ever created to be that readily available. So when I'm thinking about empathy and somebody messaged you and you just don't feel up to it and you're like, oh, well, that's rude. It's okay to be rude, not to respond right away or to give yourself a minute to not have to be available, not just to the person you're caring for, but to all the people. We don't have to always just be available to everyone. And I think as caregivers, that empathy button goes to 1,000. And I'm inviting all of us to bring it back to 85%. And that means not being available, not always anticipating, not just jumping up and saying, well, I got to do it. No. Can you take a beat and sit? Because one of the things I've loved being a parent is being a single mama. I was thinking about like I have beautiful Black boys and they're grown now, obviously, but having to like step back and let them just handle it for a minute, that really helped with their own maturity. And I know with caregiving, sometimes there's going to be things you got to take care of and you have to help for safety reason. But if there's just one or two things that you can just hold back on, that you don't have to anticipate or you don't have to involve yourself in, and that includes other people that you feel you might have obligations to, that you're able to pull back your energy a little bit. I think that will help find some balance between being overly empathetic and taking really good care of yourself.
Right. It is about balance. It is about meeting people where they are and providing empathy and also self-empathy, right? We can't leave ourselves out of that equation. So, wow, thank you, Renita. We have a few minutes left.
Okay.
If anybody has any burning questions, feel free to unmute yourself and or use the chat. Renita is a wealth of information and support. I mean, just look at her background, look at her colors and her. I mean, are you all surprised that I found something in her that I thought was lovely? I do want to mention Renita and I both mentioned the movie The Mama Joe Project. We did have a session of our webinar in February of this year about the Mama Joe Project, and I'm happy to share with everybody that the Mama Joe movie is coming to Kansas City. We finally have a date and a location. I think I can share now. It will be on Saturday, July 19th in the afternoon. I believe it's at 4 o'clock. I'll have to double check that. And we will be at I believe it's the Glenwood Theater on 95th Street in Overland Park, 95th and Mission. Those of you who saw our Why movie when we premiered it in March of 2023, it's at the same location. And we will invite everyone to come out and watch the Mama Joe movie, which is about the family of Dr. Herb Caldwell in St. Louis, Missouri. And his mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and his mother was a lot like Renita, was a light for the community, was a wealth of information herself, and poured her heart out to so many people. And then it became her turn to receive because she got a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And Dr. Caldwell and his family thought that one way that they could soothe their souls about caring for their mom was to make a movie. So they really went big instead of going home. And they made a beautiful movie, and it was my honor to participate in it. And so we are bringing it to Kansas City next month. We'll have some information in the My Alliance newsletter about how you can watch that. And we'll have concessions and resources and all kinds of fun stuff. So you can watch it on PBS, but for an even better experience, I recommend that you come out and see it with us in person in July. And that is going to be in conjunction with our annual dementia training room. Some of you have maybe attended that, and that will be on Friday, July 18th. So we're having a caregiver support weekend in July. And on Friday, July 18th, we will be at the Matt Ross Community Center from I think about 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. And we will have all kinds of information, resources, and support for caregivers. And it's the format of it is that people come. They can come all day. They can come for just part of the day, and they'll sit at a table and they'll hear about a topic related to caregiving, whether that's bathing or driving or legal issues or participation in research. We've got a whole list of topics. I believe some of our speakers are on this very call. So you'll get to meet some of those folks. And there'll be short sessions, like 15 minutes. You sit and visit with a social worker in many cases and hear about these different topics. And then the bell rings and you can go spend 15 minutes with someone else and then someone else. And you can spend as much of your Friday as you would like to with us. We will have some snacks. And then you can come back on Saturday and watch the Mama Joe movie with us. And so it's going to be a whole weekend dedicated to supporting caregivers. And it's because of the work that Renita and so many social workers do that we can dream up activities like this. It's one of my favorite things that we do. And I'm really looking forward to it. So mark your calendars and watch my Alliance newsletter for more information about the Dementia Training Room. And just as how many points of privilege can one take in this webinar? I don't know, but Renita mentioned seeing the Mama Joe movie at the Rosa
And
Parks Museum.
I just recently hosted it at the Rosa Parks Museum. I just wanted to say that. And we had social workers there too. And that if you haven't seen it yet, go and do it in person because we just had it here as well.
Wonderful. And it's, I had no idea when I first met the director, you know, what a project this would be, but it's my understanding that the movie has been with Renita in Alabama. It's been at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library in Atlanta.
That's where I first saw it.
It's been in St. Louis several times. I think the director told me he was in Jackson, Mississippi last week. It's been in Houston, and now it will be in Kansas City. So very exciting. And again, we will share more information with that. Know that My Alliance is always here for you. The Cognitive Care Network is here for you. KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center has lots of support for you. We're always doing some, what I think is really meaningful research to get us closer to that cure and that treatment and that prevention. So with that, it's 2:31. So I suppose I have to wrap us up for the day. Renita, thank you so much. I mean, I feel like I got some good support today, hearing from you as I always do when I get to talk to you. Oh, one last thing. Next week, we will not have a webinar. Oh, I will miss you. But next Thursday is June 19th. And it is a holiday. It is Juneteenth. And so KU ADRC will be closed for that day in recognition of that momentous day. We will send a newsletter on Monday, the 16th, I believe it is, but we will not meet again for the webinar until June 26th. So I'll keep you in suspense until then. But we've got some great webinars coming up. I can't wait to meet Renita's sister, Kendra, on an upcoming webinar. And all in the family, right? That genetic component of empathy must be a genetic trait, right? All right, folks, thank you so much, Renita. We will stay in touch. I hope everybody has a great week and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.